normal, there are as many as 200 flames at the bottom of the lake as a result of training accidents. And if you ask the Navy, that's not a lot. Who knows what the Navy thinks a lot is? The pier did not become the current cultural attraction it is today until 1995. And if you are headed back to the pier after the tour, highly recommend hopping on the Ferris wheel for the views or the Children's Museum for silly, goofy fun. Fun for all ages. Highly recommend. Now we are headed underneath Jean-Baptiste Pondisalvo Lakeshore Drive. And as we emerge from the other side, the city really opens up for you guys. It's one of my favorite photo opportunities. Highly recommend getting those phones out, those cameras, because this is, I think, the best photo on the tour. One of my favorites. I love that it's right at the beginning of the tour. It really kind of draws you guys in. Now I'm going to direct your attention up and to the left. And we're going to get started with these three towers that sort of undulate back and forth. This is the stunning St. Regis. It was completed in 2020. This is the third tallest building in our skyline. It is also the tallest building in the world, completed by a woman-led architecture firm. That's Jeannie Gang and her firm, Studio Gang. Now here in Chicago, we're a little obsessed with Jeannie Gang. We think she's super cool. She's a Chicagoland native. She's a certified genius, and she works on a lot of really cool Chicago-based projects. But anyway, the St. Regis, it cuts a very unique shape in the sky, but actually this thing is not curved at all. Instead, each of those floors increase or decrease by 5 inches on every side. And visually, it's a little bit of an optical illusion. The colors of the glass get darker as the floors get more narrow and lighter as the floors get wider, giving that shape even more dimension. Also, something that not a lot of Chicagoans don't realize, the center tower doesn't touch the ground. It's supported by the other two, you can walk right underneath it. Now you may be asking yourself, how does this very tall, very thin tower keep from blowing over in the wind? Well, I'll let you in on a secret. All skyscrapers sway in the wind. They have to, actually, they snap in half, but they should only sway a little bit. We call that drift. We have a lot of strategies we employ to offset drift, and we're going to talk about a few of them on the tour today, but the first one is the most visual. If you look up to the widest point of the tallest tower, you might be able to make out a couple of unfinished looking, empty looking floors. Those are blow-through floors, and they do exactly what you think they do. They allow the wind to blow through the building instead of press against it, so there's less force acting on the building. That results in less drift. Makes it way more comfy for the folks up at the top. Now between this triangular tower and this black box, we have Aqua Tower. We're going to get a really good shot of it once we get between these two buildings. Aqua Tower was completed in 2009 and designed, again, by our rock star Jeannie Gang. This is her first addition to the Chicago skyline. It is my personal favorite of hers. I think it looks like tiger stripes. But the inspiration for Aqua Tower was actually topography maps. It was envisioned as a vertical landscape of hills, valleys, and pools. And each of those balconies, they are not just beautiful, they are functional. Each one geometrically unique and arranged in a way that helps to offset wind vortices, so it makes it more comfortable to be out on the balconies in the first place. Because Jeannie Gang is a genius. Up ahead of us, a white building with a clock tower, slightly to our right. It is the famous Wrigley Building. The Wrigley Building was completed in 1924, and it is so named for its original occupants, the Wrigley Candy Company, which you might recognize from, of course, Wrigley chewing gum, or maybe Wrigley Field of the Chicago Cubs. The building is clad in glazed terracotta tiles, which are not only flame retardant, but they're able to be cleaned, which is very important at the time because pollution would often turn these white buildings black with soot. And once a year, even today, once a year, each of those 250,000 very delicate terracotta tiles are hand washed. You've got to hand wash your delicates. This is no different. The Wrigley Building, it is designed in a style called Spanish Revival. It's specifically modeled after the Giralda Tower in Seville, Spain. Now, something to remember about these revival styles, we as a country, relatively new on the world stage at this point, hadn't yet developed our own distinct American styles. So we were essentially copying Europe's homework, so we could get it together, develop a unique architectural perspective all our own. Now, immediately behind me, immediately in front of you, is the second tallest building in our skyline, the Trump International Hotel and Tower, also completed in 2009 and designed by another Chicagoland native, Adrian Smith. Adrian Smith is sometimes referred to as the world's tallest architect. That's actually not a reference to the way that guy looks. He's 5'6", like me. It's a reference to his claim to fame, designing the current world's tallest building, the Burj Khalifa in Dubai. And actually, if you took two of Trump Tower and stacked them one on top of the other, you would about get the height of the Burj Khalifa, which I think is crazy to think about, especially down here on the river. Trump Tower is also our first example along the tour of a design style called contextualism. Now, contextualism seeks to flatter its context, whether that be environmental or in conversation with the surrounding structures. As an example, this building features 3 distinct patio setbacks denoted by these gray bands that wrap around the building, and each one of them is at a very specific height. The first is the same height as the Wrigley Building, its neighbor. The second setback is the same height as Mather Tower, this white rocket ship-shaped tower, the tallest of these 4 squished together immediately across the river. And the third and tallest setback on Trump Tower is the same height as the building's neighbor. On the other side, a black box tower that is just coming into view, called the AMA Plaza. The AMA Plaza, completed in 1973, designed by the German-born Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, very influential architect, considered the father of modernism. More specifically, black box modernism. Big black box modernism. You get it. He is most known for the concept of form following function. He was a part of the Bauhaus school. He really championed the idea of design as purely purpose-driven. Important because of its functionality, and beautiful because of the precision it takes to achieve that. And we have quite a few of these black boxes here in Chicago. Over 40, actually. They're very popular. And we'll dig into the history of the black box a little bit later on. Right now, though, I would like for us all to gander at these 2 absolutely wacky corncob-shaped towers next door. These 2 are part of the complex called Marina City, completed in 1967 by the architect Bertrand Goldberg, who was a student of Mies van der Rohe, but he considered himself to be mostly a social scientist. He wanted Marina City to be a city within a city, a place where residents could live, work, be entertained, all within one complex. And he had the goal of attracting residents to the city center, because at the time, this river was still pretty gross. Nobody wanted to live downtown, and Goldberg wanted to change that. Even further, he sought to totally reject the black boxes of his mentor in favor of organic shapes. He is even quoted to say, "There are no right angles in nature, and you will find no right angles in my building," which is incredibly sassy of him to say. Included in the complex, we have a hotel, a full theater, the House of Blues, shopping, restaurants, bowling alley, daycare center, gym, plenty of valet parking. That's right, I said valet. They don't let you do that by yourself. And of course, a marina. And Goldberg's social experiment seeking to lure residents to the river was a total success. Marina City sparked a residential boom downtown that we are still feeling today. Now, to bring it a little bit closer back to today, up ahead of us on the left, this blue reflective contemporary tower with the cutouts snaking along to the top. This one is 111 West Wacker. This building has actually had a pretty interesting journey. Construction on this building started prior to the financial crisis of 2008, and it only made it up a third of its projected 90 floors before construction had to halt. But in 2012, new developers took over the project, and they kept the original stopping point in the form of that first cutout near the center of the building as a nod to the history of the project. Immediately below 111 West Wacker, here on the left side of the boat, is the River Theater section of our river walk. Different sections of the river walk serve slightly different purposes. We just passed through the section called the Cove. Up ahead is the section called the Water Plaza. The whole thing, 1.3 mile long riverfront trail, designed with the intention of turning our previously pretty gnarly and nasty waterfront into active public space. The entire thing, originally conceived all the way back in 1909 with the Burnham Plan of Chicago, but the water of the river really only started to get marginally less gross with the Clean Water Act of 1972. And construction on the Riverwalk did not even begin until 2003. So about 100 years after the fact, we finally got our act together and completed the project in 2016. Very popular together with both Chicagoans and visitors alike, I think, personally, well worth the $1.2 million investment. Up ahead of us on the right, we are approaching an absolutely massive limestone structure. This behemoth is the Merchandise Mart. And the Merch Mart was completed in 1930 to be the wholesale warehouse and trade showroom for the Marshall Field department store. May it rest in peace. With 4.2 million square feet of floor space, this was the largest building on the planet at the time it was constructed. At different points throughout history, this thing had its own zip code, its own fire station, still has its very own train station. It is also an excellent example of the Art Deco design style, which is denoted by all of these vertical racing stripes leading the eye up. It also has deep inset windows that help to reinforce that vertical movement. And this is a design style from the 1920s. It's a time of movement, of growth, of luxury. That's all really reflected here in the Mart. It has a polished Indiana limestone facade, plenty of metallic accents, and repetitive geometric patterns, which are hallmarks of the opulent Art Deco style. Also has some super weird green Pez dispenser heads facing the building. Those things don't do anything except turn green. Birds sit on them. Birds do other things on them. They are tributes to the princes of retail. Those are the heads of Marshall Field, Montgomery Ward, Woolworth, among others. Now this is my favorite area of the river, you guys. This is Wolf Point. Wolf Point is where the three branches of the Chicago River converge. The main branch we're on right now, the north branch is around the corner to the right, and the south branch we're going to head down on the left. All of them meet here at Wolf Point. And with the revitalization of the Chicago River in recent decades, this area has seen an architectural boom. Many of the shiny contemporary towers they see around you were put up within the last 8 or so years, including this one directly ahead of us that is shaped like a hot pocket. It's called River Point. It's from 2017, and actually this goofy shape is site-specific. If you look along the waterfront towards the ground, you'll see circular exhaust vents for the trains that run underground right there. And one thing you definitely can't do when installing structural supports for your skyscraper is dig through active rail lines. So their solution is this parabolic arch shape that helps to redistribute the load of the building into supports on either side, and the train is still active underneath. Next door, a totally impossible looking structure. This thing, affectionately known as the tuning fork, is 150 North Riverside. The reason this building looks this way is because of the piece of land that it's built on. Nobody used it because there are active rail lines going along the back half of the plot, and there is a city-mandated 30-foot setback for all new construction along the river, which leaves us a buildable area about 39 feet wide. So they decided to install a core supported structure. The weight of these upper floors hangs off that core structure and is evenly distributed onto either side of Y-shaped trusses. This is also the only self-optimized building on the tour. You can check out the reflection of our boat in its mirror shape. One of my favorite features, for obvious reasons. The tuning fork is also a really good example of a new trend that we're seeing in architecture, specifically in Chicago, of exposed engineering. The buildings are pretty much showing you how they're working. Those Y-shaped trusses inform the shape of 150 North Riverside. And up ahead we have another example. This is the Bank of America building. Also had to deal with that mandated 30-foot setback, but they carved the section out and left the building supports exposed. But these big metal feet, they're not just exposed supports, they're active design elements. They're even lit up at night. And that makes sense. The same firm that built this built our tuning fork back there. Getch Partners, and these guys love to show off, love to be flashy, love to get people talking, and to use the latest technology. Great news for this building. It was completed at the tail end of 2020, and therefore features some relevant technology, including a very handy hands-free elevator that you call to your floor with a smartphone app. The future is now. The past is also now, because on either side of the boat, we're about to see stunning examples of the Art Deco design style. We have the City Apple building on the left and 2 Riverside Plaza on the right. Let's focus over to the right for now. We'll hit the other side on the way back, because along the right side of the river, we're going to see the evolution of American architecture in real time. Our first exhibit, 2 Riverside Plaza, completed in 1929, originally the Chicago Daily News building. That Art Deco design style is reflective of the optimism of the time when clearly nothing was about to go wrong. Later that same year, the stock market crashed, plunging us into the Great Depression. Shortly after that, we entered into our Second World War, effectively halting the progression of American architecture for about 30 years. And by the time we were ready to return, it was an entirely new generation leading the way. These are the folks that grew up during the Great Depression. They're practical, frugal, efficient, and those values are reflected in the design style of Gateway Center 1 and Gateway Center 2. They're both that black box modernism, that style pioneered by our friend Mies van der Rohe. And he said of that black box modernism style, I don't want to be interesting, I want to be good. And what he means, according to Mies van der Rohe, good means the buildings are doing exactly what they're setting out to do as buildings, not trying to be anything else. So for this new generation of architects, ornamentation, it's not the point. They want the beauty and the stability of utility. These two black boxes, by the way, were not built by Mies van der Rohe. They are copycats. They're completed by the architecture firm Skidmore, Owings and Merrill, and these guys had a nasty little habit of copying everything Mies van der Rohe ever did, eventually earning themselves a nickname, the Three Blind Mies. That's a tragic pun if I've ever heard one. I am going to try to top that pun by the end of the tour, so prepare yourselves for that. And here in Chicago, we eventually started to tiptoe outside of our black box comfort zone, started putting up white boxes instead, like Gateway Center 3. Now officially, this style is called the International style because the popularity of this type of building means you can find one pretty much anywhere. It is brighter looking. It does convey a brighter outlook, but for me, this is my personal opinion, it's a little boring. But that's okay because we are getting straight into the 80s. The 80s are going to give us both postmodernism and contextualism. We have a great example of contextualism up ahead with this curving green building, Gateway Center 4. Shocking. 1, 2, 3, 4. The curve of this green building follows the curve of the river. And then the rippled effect of these windows on this wall closest to us, it's meant to recall the river's movement as well as color. It's contextualizing its physical environment. Also, on this wall are two vents that do not line up for some reason. It bothers me every single time we go by, so guess what? It gets to bother you now too. You are very welcome. And if you are disoriented by our brief trip through time, I invite you to check out the left side of the boat. Reorient yourself with this giant map. That red piece in the middle marks you are here. It's a big old you are here map. And we never used to talk about this building on the tours, and I guess that graded a bit. They found that out. They decided to spend $800,000 to literally put themselves on the map. Was it a good investment, though? Only you can tell. Nobody else sees this. This is for you. Do you like it? On the right, a truly huge building, just as big. It is. If it looks familiar to you, it's probably because you're recognizing it from its role as Gotham City Bank in The Dark Knight. It's not a bank, though. It is a post office. The largest post office in the world, actually, at the time of its construction in 1932. And we definitely needed that here in Chicago, where we were the mail order catalog capital of the world. A little company called Sears that you may have heard of, sending out encyclopedia-sized catalogs that all arrived in the mail, along with every single little thing in it. We needed the space. Postal Service moved out of the old post office in 1997, and even though this building was a landmark, it fell into disrepair. It has since been fully renovated at the absolutely staggering cost of $900 million. Right. It is now home to Walgreens, Uber, PepsiCo, and it has a 3.5-acre rooftop park that's straight up larger than most of the earthbound parks near my house. Context, story time. But first, just a little tidbit about me. My name is Sadie. I grew up in a log cabin in the middle of rural Michigan. And I know how that can sound. You guys don't gotta worry about me. This is not a Kimmy Schmidt situation. My parents are super normal, I swear. They're actually both from the Chicagoland area. They just wanted to build their own unique home, but were unable to do that in the state of Illinois due to incredibly restricted building codes. Because as it turns out, Chicago is not super fond of primarily flammable wooden structures. For a very good reason, Chicago's past trauma, the Great Chicago Fire. The fire started a few blocks south of where we are right now on Tacobin Street. That spot, now home to the Chicago Fire Academy, does nothing to destroy our sense of irony. This event is the catalyst to a series of events that allowed Chicago to become an architectural superzone. So let's go back in time to the night of October 8th, 1871. The city was unknowingly on the brink of massive destruction. Much of the city infrastructure up until that point was made of wood, down to the streets and sidewalks, and it was a rain-starved time bomb. It had not rained since July 4th of that year, and as autumn was approaching, a lot of households were stocking up on supplies to keep warm in the winter. One household, the O'Learys, kept their supply of coal in their barn. A fire broke out in that barn, and strong southwest winds carried the inferno straight toward the downtown area, and most people thought, I will be safe across the river. Unfortunately for them, at that point, this river was so polluted that there was a thick layer of oil sitting on top of the water. The river ignited, and the inferno ran unchecked through the city, eventually destroying 17,000 structures and burning 3.5 square miles to the ground. It left 300 people dead and 100,000 people homeless. The first iteration of our city was gone. So we built a second one, the Second City. That is where that nickname actually comes from. It's our rise from the ashes of our former selves. And with this destruction also comes an opportunity to rebuild thoughtfully. Architects and engineers from all over the world came to Chicago for their chance to rebuild a piece of it, and this is how we got the world's first skyscraper, a 10-story structure with an inner steel frame. This is game-changing for all of us, actually. Instead of continuing to build our cities out, we all start building up. So, flash forward about 22 years, we have fully bounced back from the fire. Everybody's copying our skyscrapers, and we're feeling pretty good. So we decided to host the 1893 World's Fair. It's actually how we get another one of our many nicknames, the Windy City. Representatives from Chicago, in an effort to impress the Fair Planning Committee, we're doing a little boasting, inflating the truth a little bit, and journalists from New York caught a hold of this, started calling us windbags, blowing hot air, telling long-winded stories. So the name The Windy City is actually about how we don't shut up. I'm sure I can't relate. Good news is, we wanted to host the fair, immediately set to work. The lead architect of that fair was a man named Daniel Burnham, and over the 6-month run of the World's Fair, 27 million people visited Chicago, were introduced for the first time to a lot of your favorite stuff, like peanut butter, the zipper, shredded wheat, the brownie, my personal favorite, the pressed penny machine, introduced in 1893, still as relevant as ever. With the success of the World's Fair, Daniel Burnham then went on to publish the 1909 Burnham Plan of Chicago, and included in this plan to optimize our city were ideas he took from highly functional cities all over the world. Stuff like streets arranged in an easy-to-navigate grid pattern, 18-foot alleyways, 25 or 29 miles of shoreline reserved for use as public parks. Also inspired something called the City Beautiful movement. This is the philosophy that beautiful, accessible, functional cities have a dignifying effect on their residents. It's the reason Chicago has over 600 parks, the reason we have boulevards, fountains, public spaces like the Riverwalk, the incorporation of public art, stuff we can sometimes take for granted about our cities, but it makes Chicago a pretty great place to live. And guys, we are turning the boat around. Stand up, take as many photos as you would want of my beautiful city, the Paris on the Prairie, as Daniel Burnham would call it. Get a great shot of some of our most iconic structures from back here. Highlight